Well, our top focus story, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who flew to the United States at President Joe Biden's invitation to participate in the first in-person Quad summit, has arrived in Washington a short while ago. The Prime Minister has a packed schedule as he's also, apart from bilateral meetings, he's also going to be addressing the United Nations General Assembly. Prime Minister Modi received a warm welcome from the members of the Indian community at the Joint Air Base Andrews in Washington, D.C. He stepped out of his motorcade to interact with Indians who were waiting at the airport. We'll just play up those visuals for you. That's, of course, Prime Minister Modi stepping down at in Washington. Prime Minister, remember, is there for a 3-day visit. He's going to be holding several key bilateral meetings. On the agenda today, he's going to be meeting the Australian Prime Minister for a bilateral, Scott Morrison, and he's also going to be holding meetings with global CEOs. So those are pictures of the Indian diaspora there waiting to meet Prime Minister Modi. He stepped out of his motorcade and, of course, met with the Indian diaspora that were waiting there to greet him. Now, this is Prime Minister Modi's first visit abroad beyond the neighbourhood since the outbreak of coronavirus. And like I said, Prime Minister has a packed schedule, individual meetings with global CEOs, a bilateral meeting with the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison scheduled for today. As far as tomorrow, well, Prime Minister is going to be holding a bilateral with Kamala Harris, the Vice President, and a bilateral with Yoshihide Suga, the Japanese Prime Minister. That's on the schedule for tomorrow.
Prime Minister's visit to United States has 6 elements, 6 broad elements. So first is, of course, the bilateral meeting with President Biden. Second is the meeting with the Vice President Kamala Harris. Third is the Quad summit. Fourth is the interactions with Prime Ministers of Australia and Prime Minister of Japan separately. Then there is an interaction with select industry leaders. And finally, there is the UN section.
Now, well, remember, there's been a huge controversy as far as the approval of Covishield in the UK is concerned. The vaccine has been approved, but Indians will still need to quarantine. Prime Minister Modi yesterday called for international travel to be made easier through the mutual recognition of vaccine certificates amid this entire row with the UK over double vaccinated Indians still having to quarantine.
The COVID-19 pandemic has been an unprecedented disruption, and it is not yet over. Much of the world is still to be vaccinated. That is why this initiative by President Biden is timely and welcome. We have shared medicines and medical supplies with over 150 countries. 2 indigenously developed vaccines have received emergency use authorization in India, including the world's first DNA-based vaccine.
Today,
well, UK approved the India-made Covishield, but fully vaccinated Indians with Covishield still have to undergo a 10-day mandatory quarantine in the UK, including 2 RT-PCR tests. Now, UK authorities say the vaccine is not the problem, but it is the Indian vaccine certificate which is the problem. Now, the man in charge of the CoWIN app in India, Dr. R.S. Sharma, spoke to NDTV on doubts over certification. Here's what he had to say.
A day after India accused the UK of discriminatory vaccine policy and an Indian lawmaker accused it of vaccine racism, the UK approved India-made Covishield, but with a big catch. Covishield is only recognized if administered in a green-listed country, which India is not. So Indian travellers to the UK fully vaccinated with Covishield in India will still have to face a strict quarantine of 10 days and take 2 RT-PCR tests. The British High Commission seems to imply that the problem is not the vaccine which is designed and used in the UK, but the Indian government's vaccine certificate. They said, we are engaging with the Government of India to explore how we could expand UK recognition of vaccine certification to people vaccinated by a relevant public health body in India.
we are now saying we're getting rid of the green and amber list. India was amber, and we're saying anyone who is from either of those lists now, you come in and you quarantine for 10 days unless you are double jabbed with one of the British regulators approved vaccines, which includes AstraZeneca and, to be clear, includes Covishield. So Covishield is not the issue. For the last couple of weeks, we've been having detailed technical conversations between basically the builders of the apps of the UK and India, because India has the CoWIN app, we have our NHS app in the UK, and those folks have been talking to each other. Right, how does your app work? How does that work? What are the security protocols? All this because we hope it will be mutual.
The head of CoWIN told NDTV that the UK High Commissioner visited him on September 2nd to understand technical aspects of the CoWIN system. India has reserved the right to retaliatory action. The latest changes by the UK have not addressed New Delhi's concerns nor calmed the furor surrounding vaccine racism. With Srinivasan Jain, Meher Pandey for NDTV.
Well, Sanket, thank you very much for having me on your channel. Firstly, I would say that I have not come across any statement either from the British High Commission or any information from our Ministry of External Affairs or from the United Kingdom's government that there is any concern on the certificate issued by CoWIN. So I do not know where from you have got this information that UK has raised certain concerns.
Well, moving on, the families of those who died of coronavirus in India will receive a 50,000 rupee compensation. This is what the central government has informed the Supreme Court in an affidavit that it filed yesterday. The affidavit, however, also clarifies that it is the states that will pay this compensation, and that too within 30 days.
In an affidavit filed in the Supreme Court, the centre says everyone who's lost their lives due to COVID will be compensated and the families will receive 50,000 rupees for each COVID-19 death. Now, of course, there'll be discussions on that figure, the amount, but of course, it's also a start because in several states, there is compensation for COVID-19, but in some states like Maharashtra, for example, the police are getting 50 lakh if they've died on duty during COVID. And I have with me two people who've lost family members due to COVID. First is Mr. Adil Khan and then of course Mr. Zubair Qazi. But आपसे जानना चाहेंगे कि रकम जो बताया गया है उसको लेकर आप क्या कहेंगे, क्या हुआ था आपके परिवार से, कौन कोविड की वजह से किसका डेथ हुआ है?
मेरे पिताजी का दिलदार खान का डेथ हुआ है कोरोना के वजह से, तो अभी संजोग हॉस्पिटल में बीटी में, तो इसके लिए मुआवजा जो भी है कम है।
जुबैर काजी जी, आपके परिवार से कौन किसका
डेथ हुआ था 10 जून को? 3-4 हॉस्पिटल में लेके गए, किसी ने उनको एडमिट नहीं किया। फाइनली जेजे ने एडमिट किया है, लेकिन अल्टीमेटली वो रात को 10:30 बजे डिक्लेयर डेथ ऑफ कोविड-19।
और ये रकम जो है आपको क्या लगता है
मिलना चाहिए? जब सुप्रीम कोर्ट का ऑर्डर है तो गवर्नमेंट शुड रिस्पेक्ट द जुडिशरी, और वो रकम मिलना चाहिए। अभी तक मिली नहीं है हमको, लेकिन मिलना चाहिए।
Well, moving on to the other big story that we're tracking today, the Uttar Pradesh government has recommended a CBI investigation into the death of Narendra Giri, the head of the top religious body, the Akhil Bharatiya Akhada Parishad. The development comes a day after the state police arrested Anand Giri, Narendra Giri's protege and closest aide, till they fell out in May. Anand Giri, it is alleged, had been harassing the religious leader who allegedly died by suicide. The police said a suicide note was found next to his body and that mentioned Anand Giri. The state police had also formed an 18-member special investigation team to probe the incident. Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath had earlier said that several pieces of evidence had been collected and that culprits won't be spared. The opposition, which is the Congress, had strongly criticized the government over the incident and demanded a CBI probe. Here's the report.
The seer who allegedly died by suicide being laid to rest. Head of the Akhada Parishad, a massive governing body of the saints, Mahant Narendra Giri's body was buried in the compound of his ashram. This, according to his wish, penned down in what is purportedly a suicide note. The main accused, his disciple Anand Giri, was roughed up while being produced in the court. The letter, which authorities claim has been written by Narendra Giri moments before his death, says the following. There are two different set of letters written. One purportedly written on the 13th and one on the 20th of September. The dates have been cut and changed to the 20th, which is the day of the death. The letter talks about harassment by disciple Anand Giri, Adya and Sandeep Tiwari. The letter says that Anand Giri was planning to release a fake video of him with a woman. The truth would have come out anyway, but the Mahant would have lost respect. He says that he's ending his life because of humiliation and he has been backstabbed by his own. The letter names Balbir Giri as successor, and the letter also reflects inability to die by suicide earlier. But the UP police right now is only investigating an abetment to suicide angle, having arrested 3 of his aides, the flamboyant young sadhu Anand Giri, Adya and Sandeep Tiwari. The opposition though feels the suicide theory does not add up. SP Chief Akhilesh Yadav in a tweet demanded a judicial probe instead of the UP police probe. Narendra Giri is said to have been close to the Yadavs. So was this a death by suicide or a death by murder? Opposition greets the suicide theory with skepticism. Doubts are being raised whether the Mahant wrote the suicide letter or not. All eyes are now on the findings of a post-mortem report which has been initiated by a high-level panel of 5 doctors. Bureau Report, NDTV.
Well, on to the other big development we're tracking after the DRI seized 3,000 kgs of heroin estimated to be worth nearly 21,000 crore rupees at the Mundra port in Gujarat 1 week ago. A couple in whose name the import-export license was taken has been arrested in Chennai with a registered address in Vijayawada. What really is the Andhra Pradesh connection to the narcotic trail? Uma Sudhir explores.
There could be more than 3,000 kgs of heroin that's been smuggled into India. Investigating agencies are probing this after the 15th September seizure in Gujarat's Mundra port. Sources say a similar consignment came in June 2021 of 24 tons, marked as talc stone, via the same Gujarat port and is said to have been transported to Delhi. Security agencies are trying to find out if heroin was smuggled in that import consignment as well. Now the drug trail is widening. Investigation has revealed that the drug consignment concealed as semi-processed talc stones was exported by Kandahar-based company Hassan Hussain Limited in Afghanistan, and it was shipped through Bandar Abbas port in Iran to Mundra port in Gujarat, imported by Ashi Trading Company, located in Vijayawada but owned by a Chennai-based couple. And the agency suspects that this consignment too was intended to be delivered in Delhi.
There is in fact said to be a third consignment that came through the same Mundra port and again marked as semi-processed talcum stone. The common link between the 3 shipments is that all of them had the same number on the country of origin certificates, which are now thought to be fake. But interestingly, this one had a different Afghani supplier and this time a Delhi importer.
While the Directorate of Revenue Intelligence is tight-lipped on the ongoing pan-India operation to nab the big players involved in the syndicate, sources have told NDTV that the Vijayawada-based company was only a name lender and the arrested couple may not have known about the heroin consignment that was put below 2 layers of talc stones in powder. Investigators say the place of origin for the consignment is Nimruz province in Afghanistan, where talc is not produced. 5 more individuals, including 4 Afghan nationals, have been arrested. The address of Ashi Trading Company that was on the consignment bill is this house in Vijayawada, belonging to Govindaraju Taraka. Her daughter Vaishali and son-in-law Sudhakar were arrested in Chennai on Saturday.
The couple Sudhakar and Vaishali had got GST registration in August 2020 and used their export-import license in order to import the consignments, and they were paid 30,000 rupees for every container and 3 lakh rupees for customs clearances and transport to Delhi. They were in fact expecting 2 more consignments to arrive shortly.
1,75,000 करोड़ के 25,000 किलो हेरोइन ड्रग्स कहां गए जो तथाकथित तौर से जून में आए थे इसी अडानी पोर्ट से.
Adani Group, which operates the Mundra port, says, "We have no policing authority over the containers or the millions of tons of cargo that pass through the terminals in Mundra or any of our ports."
Sources in central agencies say that the large seizure of drugs being reported in India and Sri Lanka in recent time shows that the drug syndicate is now relying more on maritime routes, and it's a matter of concern. Government sources have told NDTV that keeping security implications in mind, this case will be handed over to NIA from DRI soon. With Uma Sudhir and camera person Pooja Arya, This is Arvind Gunasekar for NDTV.
Well, let's shift our focus and get you the very latest from the Naga peace talks. 2 days after the centre resumed talks with the rebel group, the National Socialist Council, former Nagaland Governor R.N. Ravi today resigned as the interlocutor for these negotiations, making way for the government to appoint his replacement and resolve an issue that had turned into an embarrassment. Mr. Ravi was transferred as Tamil Nadu governor nearly 2 weeks ago, but hadn't resigned as interlocutor. Let's go right across to Ratnadeep joining us with the very latest. Ratnadeep, what more can you tell us?
Well, this is something which was expected given the fact that after Mr. Ravi's transfer to Tamil Nadu, it was clear that New Delhi is trying to restart the negotiations, at least the formal negotiations with the main Naga rebel group, the Naga armed group NSNIM, and therefore, remember, there for the last 2 years there have been a deadlock in the peace initiative. In fact, it was in October 2019 that the last formal talks between the then interlocutor Mr. Ravi and the leadership of NSNIM took place, and then over the issue of the demand of a separate flag and a separate constitution, there was deadlock, and then the NSNIM leadership had written to the Prime Minister about the fact that they want a change in interlocutor. They had alleged Mr. Ravi of leaking out details of the framework agreement, and after this, it seems now New Delhi is pushing the talks forward, and in all likelihood, the mediator, the New Delhi appointed mediator, Mr. A.K. Mishra, the former Special Director of Intelligence Bureau, will be named as the interlocutor. He's already in talks with the NSN leadership, as well as you have seen that even New Delhi has opened up informal channel of communication through Nagaland Chief Minister Nikhil Rio, as well as Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sharma, who also heads the Northeast Democratic Alliance, the non-Congress political platform led by the BJP in the Northeast. So there is a two-pronged approach which has been taken. All the opposition parties in Nagaland have joined the government to form an opposition-less government so as to pave a path for the final settlement. So what we are picking up from sources is that with Mr. Ravi now tendering his resignation, in all likelihood, Mr. Mishra will be made the new interlocutor, who is already in talks with the NSN leadership, and the talks will be taken to the next level.
Thanks very much, Ratnadeep, for joining us with the very latest. We'll keep a close watch on all those developments. Welcome back. 5 men who claim to be from a group called the Hindu Sena were arrested by the police for vandalizing the official residence of Hyderabad MP Asauddin Owaisi in Delhi's Ashoka Road. The incident took place on Tuesday evening. Reacting to the incident, Asauddin Owaisi said the mob raised communal slogans and threatened to kill him.
"24 hours later at MP Asauddin Owaisi's residence here in the national capital. This is his residence and this is the back lane of the residence. Mr. Owaisi claims to be at least 13 people who were here present last evening. Now, since this morning, the update in the matter is that at least 6 CRPF security personnel have been posted at his residence. What we are also learning is that at least 300 people live in this area, which is also called as a VIP area in Delhi's Ashoka Road. Like I mentioned, the Prime Minister's office, the Delhi Police headquarters, the Election Commission's headquarters, all surrounded here at the MP's residence. But what we are learning is that the caretakers of this house who've been living here and working for Mr. Owaisi for the last 40 years, their windows of their particular portion of the house too was hit at and pelted with stones. There were red brick stones that were pelted inside this house, and of course slogans that were screamed at Mr. Owaisi. The slogans were Jai Shri Ram, Jai Mahadev and Owaisi Bahar Aao. These were what the people who had gathered here, who claimed that they were from the Hindu Sena group, came here, and they're also learning that they ferried here to Mr. Owaisi's residence in a cab, very casually got off at this particular location and started shouting and chanting slogans of Jai Shri Ram and Jai Mahadev and Owaisi Bahar Aao. People gathered here had gone live on Facebook while creating creating this tension and this chaos and this moment of fear, because there is also a family. The caretakers are a family here who also have children. They showed us the red brick stones that were pelted inside, which is still lying inside. With camera person Shashikant Jha in Delhi, Shanakshi Chakravarti for NDTV.
Hyderabad facing early elimination there. Let's talk about the result with our guests at this hour. We are joined by Chetan Narula, who is a senior cricket journalist. Also joining me on the show is Babashish Nanda, fantasy gully expert, and the two fans of the two teams, Deepthi Sarikonda of the Hyderabad team and Ahan Gupta of the Delhi team. To you first, Chetan, Hyderabad facing early elimination. Is it also largely because of David Warner's form, the man who has powered them all the last few seasons?
Well, Rika, you can't rely on one man to win a tournament like the IPL. Of course, David Warner has always been very instrumental for Sunrisers Hyderabad, but just to rely on one person or one batsman, it just cannot be the strategy of a franchisee. I mean, you have Rashid Khan, Kane Williamson. I think the formula from the very beginning was not right. Even in the first half of the tournament, they were struggling for a proper balance in their lineup. So I think the lack of a proper balance is more to do with it. Warner's lack of form, surprising lack of form, but just very coincidental, to be honest.
Let's talk about the man in form, Shikhar Dhawan, who's now got the orange cap back and has now made 400 runs in the IPL for 8th time. Well, Babashish, coming back to you, would you have picked him as your fantasy player tonight?
Of course, Rekha. I mean, we talked about the template of Shikhar Dhawan, the Shikhar Dhawan 2.0 that you can talk about, who takes enough deliveries but understands the tempo of the batting. Even early on when he was taking on Bhuvneshwar Kumar, he was just using his crease and using his feet just to negate the swing and still get the boundaries away. The thing that Sunrisers Hyderabad really lacked in this innings was, you see three batsmen, Saha, Williamson, Pandey, they all took 17, 26, 16 balls. Talk about Delhi, anyone who went beyond 15 balls, played about 40 odd balls and got them the runs. So that's how you bat on these kind of pitches. If you have got in, then make sure you score big. Delhi did, Hyderabad didn't. They haven't done for most of the season, and yeah, they're done.
Talking a little more about Shikhar, coming back to you, Chetan. Well, he not only had made those crucial runs, but also had a half-century partnership with Shreyas Iyer. Would you say that really laid the foundation of this win, even though it wasn't at all score to chase?
No, it wasn't. But at the same time, Riga, Delhi's batting has been, clicking throughout the season. They just look unbeatable at the moment. Their top order, it's doing really well. Even before the break, we had Shikhar Dhawan and Prithvi Shaw lighting up the run charts. You had Rishabh Pant coming up the order, and he was scoring runs. And now they've got Shreyas Iyer back. I mean, how much stronger can they get, really? So I think it's just a continuation of good form, and Dhawan has a point too. As you had mentioned, he's missed the bus for the T20 World Cup, so that probably hurts him a bit.
Coming to you, Ahan, Shreyas Iyer, he was injured in the first half of the season. He came back, he lost his captaincy. Do you think he also felt that he had a point to prove if he is to, get back his captaincy once again, and hence started in the way he did tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think Shreyas actually has 2 points to prove. One is to the Delhi team for he believes he should have been captain and he's lost that. And the second is to the Indian team because honestly, before he got injured, he was a sure shot pick in the 15 and now he's been dropped from that. So I mean, he is in the reserve, but he's not in the squad. So I think he had 2 points to prove. And it's good today. He used the opportunity, low run chase to get himself back into form. And I think it's only going to go up from here.
Deepthi, well, the season, it was a stop-start season this time around. Hyderabad didn't have a good first half. Even in the second half, despite change in captaincy, the team doesn't seem to be coming together.
Absolutely. This is something that we expect, like after a long break. We were looking forward for a team to regroup and have a new approach, but they didn't have that approach, so which is really hurtful as a fan. But what we expect is we have still 6 games and nothing to lose, so they have to change their strategies completely and approach it in a different way, so that try to give players who they haven't given the chance, like the likes of Virat Singh and those players who haven't got chance, and try to play with some dignity and not lose the games the way they are right now.
Chetan, Deepti has made a very interesting point that Hyderabad team has 6 games, nothing to lose. Would you say it's a dangerous situation to be in? It can upset a few of the teams that are trying to make it to the top 4 and who are towards the lower half of top 4. They should now be wary of Hyderabad.
Absolutely. I mean, in T20 cricket, you cannot just, neglect anybody's form, really. And they've won 1 game all season, which is a bit of an anomaly. Even if you are having a really bad run of games, you still win 3-4 matches. So I think a couple of wins will come along the way for Sunrisers Hyderabad, but whoever loses against them, they'll be tripped up and, their qualification could be in danger. So I think everybody will be really wary of Sunrisers Hyderabad. I'll be really surprised if they finish the season with just the 1 win, because T20 very, very unpredictable. Anything can happen on any particular day. So yeah, any team that loses against them, they're basically losing not just 2 points, but also run rate and possible qualification.
Babashish, well, Hyderabad has only 1 win, but when you look at the side, there are few players who are exceptional performers like Rashid Khan. Would you still continue to factor him in as one of the fantasy players for the season?
Oh, absolutely. Rekha, even today when the chips were down and he was bowling to get a wicket, he was just being disheartened because most of the Delhi top order wanted to just play him out. Shreyas Iyer did come out with a little bit of intent, slogged him across the line, but he was always looking for wickets. And I think as millions of fantasy gamers out there will be looking at the Hyderabad team and be wondering what are we doing with it. But I think I would just suggest that stick to your big guns. The likes of Williamson, the likes of Rashid, they will still keep performing. And yeah, if you're coming up against those players, then yeah, you better have them and not have them basically. So yeah, pick them still.
Stick to your big guns. That is the suggestion coming from Babashish. The other big factor that favored Delhi today was the coming together of Enrique Nokia and Kagiso Rabada. Ahan, coming back to you, how heartening is it for a fan to see Onria back the way he did and, garnering those 2 wickets and the man of the match at the end of the night?
Yeah, I mean, I think we spoke about this on the pre-show as well. It was really exciting to see those 2 come together and bowl together. And I mean, at that first over that Nokia bowled, I think he bowled 1 ball under 145, which is absolutely insane. To just come straight off the bat and bowl that quickly, it set the tone, it got Warner out, and I think from there, Delhi were always on top and they just kept that up. So I think I'm only looking forward to it. He definitely bowled, even though Rabada got more wickets, I think he was the more influential and impactful bowler. He's the one who worried the Sunrisers more. So I'm really, really happy to see him back, and hopefully they can come together and for the rest of the season just keep playing the way they are.
Chetan, before we go, one last question to you. The way we've seen David Warner in this match, the way we saw Suresh Raina in the last match, would you say that these 2 exceptional T20 batsmen are slowly walking into the sunset?
Could be. It's never predictable with the likes of Raina and Warner because they have been so influential in the T20 game. I would say that Warner maybe still has a bit more time because as an overseas player or as somebody who leads the Sunrisers group, he could still be in contention when the next year's mega auction happens or somebody could pick him up. Raina has already declared that he'll walk away if Dhoni walks away, and I pretty much expect MS Dhoni to walk away from CSK after this season. I mean, look, Virat Kohli has already...
Yeah, that's a big prediction, really.
There's no point. I mean, there's no point really for MS Dhoni to continue with somebody like Virat Kohli has quit captaincy because you need to plan ahead. So, never say never, but yeah, we'll probably see the last of some of the illustrious names this IPL.
Absolutely. And next year there's a big auction coming up. So perhaps a lot of these big guns are going to go next year and we'll see fresh faces coming in. Talking about fresh faces, well, thank you very much all of you for joining me on the broadcast. Chetan, Babashish, Deepti and Ahan.
Welcome back. On to the other big story we're tracking today. The CBI has unearthed a big racket involving the NEET exams and booked Maharashtra-based coaching center and students. Now, the racket allegedly used proxy candidates to crack the NEET exams for participants. 50 lakh rupees per applicant was paid, and of course, applicant data was modified, and in some cases, even the OMR sheets were manipulated. Welcome back. Prime Minister Modi, who flew to the US at President Joe Biden's invitation to participate in the first in-person summit of Quad leaders, has arrived in Washington. The Prime Minister, who has a packed schedule, will also address the UN General Assembly. This is the first in-person meeting of Quad leaders since the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, that's the visual of Prime Minister Modi there arriving in Washington just a short while ago, and like I said, the Prime Minister has a series of meetings planned, a packed schedule. He is going to be holding a bilateral with the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison today. He's also going to be holding one-on-one meetings with global CEOs in a short while from now. But interesting to see Prime Minister Modi there receiving a warm welcome from members of the Indian diaspora at the Joint Base Andrews in Washington DC. He stepped out of his motorcade to interact with Indians who were waiting at the airport. This is Prime Minister's first visit abroad beyond the neighborhood since the outbreak of the pandemic.
To United States has six broad elements. So first is, of course, the bilateral meeting with President Biden. Second is the meeting with the Vice President Kamala Harris. Third is the Quad Summit. Fourth is the interactions with Prime Ministers of Australia and Prime Minister of Japan separately. Then there is an interaction with select industry leaders, and finally there is the UN section.
And while it is a 3-day visit where the Prime Minister has a packed agenda, he has individual meetings with global CEOs. That's going to happen at 7:15 p.m. There is a bilateral meeting with the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, and that's going to be at 11 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Tomorrow, on the 24th of September, the Prime Minister is going to be holding a bilateral with Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, and that's going to happen at 12:45 a.m. India Standard Time, and that's going to be followed by a bilateral meeting with Yoshihide Suga, the Japanese Prime Minister, and that's going to happen at 3 a.m. Indian Standard Time. Now, Prime Minister Modi on Wednesday called for international travel to be made easier through a mutual recognition of vaccine certificates amid a row with the UK over double vaccinated Indians still having to quarantine.
The COVID-19 pandemic has been an unprecedented disruption, and it is not yet over. Much of the world is still to be vaccinated. That is why this initiative by President Biden is timely and welcome. We have shared medicines and medical supplies with over 150 countries. 2 indigenously developed vaccines have received emergency use authorization in India, including the world's first DNA-based vaccine.
All right. Well, Prime Minister is in the US for a 3-day visit, and to make sense of what one can anticipate and what can one expect from this all-important visit, Seema Sirohi, columnist for the Economic Times, joins us from New York. We also have Shilkant Sharma, former Secretary General SAARC, joining us here. Thanks very much for being with us on NDTV this morning. Seema Sirohi, if I can begin by asking you, a lot of anticipation really, around the Prime Minister's visit to the US. He's of course there, on the invitation of the US President, and a lot of key important meetings, including bilaterals with the Australian Prime Minister, the Japanese Prime Minister and the Vice President.
Yes.
the visit is extremely important and extremely busy in terms of the number of high-level meetings the Prime Minister will have in Washington. So it comes against the background of the withdrawal of US forces from Afghanistan, the announcement of the new security alliance between the US, UK and Australia. So the Quad Summit, which is one of the main meetings that the Prime Minister will attend, apart from the bilateral meeting, both of these are extremely important because this kind of sets the census signal that democracies are aligned and they want to have a free and open Indo-Pacific. So the very fact that an in-person summit is happening is of note, and it shouldn't, the importance shouldn't be ignored. It's hugely important that within a few months of Joe Biden taking office, he had a virtual summit at the leaders level, and then now he's having an in-person summit. So the commitment of the Biden administration to the idea, the policy of the Indo-Pacific that President Donald Trump actually sort of crystallized is extremely important.
Right. And, the Afghan situation, the implications of what's happening in Afghanistan, of course, a clear focus on, the situation with China. Shilkan Sharma, do you believe that all of that is also, likely to be discussed among the leaders?
It's quite likely because in the bilateral meetings in Washington and the Quad meeting, these very close security concerns of India and these concerns are, commonly shared by India, Australia, Japan and US. So they are bound to come up. The post-US withdrawal from Afghanistan, the situation in Afghanistan seems to be that of triumph for China, Pakistan, and they seem to be running the affairs there, and they keep reaching the world. One has to take stock of this and realize that while we are for the Afghan people, the situation in Afghanistan, how conducive it is to allow the international community to help the Afghan people instead of helping the Afghan government and their backer Pakistan. So these are the matters which we have to really see in the overall context. But the other issues like this counter-terrorism remains on the front burner, and global issues like climate change and pandemic. These 2 years have been lost. Prime Minister visited there 2 years back, and last year it was not possible because of the situation of the pandemic. This year there is some respite, so this personal physical meetings are taking place, man to man, and they are very important for communication, understanding, and for further bolstering the partnership which India has forged with all these countries, and particularly US. President Biden has spoken to Prime Minister after taking over, and then he's had several virtual summits. So and his speech on the first day was indicative of the wider American interest and their good intentions, that they are not for again ripping the world apart. And the reaction of China to that is usual, like we are no zero-sum game. They keep playing zero-sum game and they keep reaching the world, they don't play zero-sum game. So, this is the situation, this double talk of China, Pakistan has to be dealt with firmly,
right.
And they should not fall for it. This wretched thing which has been around for 30 years that will help you, and then they cheat and deceive.
Right.
That should not happen.
And of course, there is going to be that UNGA address as well, which is going to be extremely important, and it'll be very closely, it'll be very closely looked at really as to what message the Prime Minister carries there. But Seema Sirohi, interesting to see that the Prime Minister landed, on a rainy day in Washington, but there were Indian diaspora there to greet him. We know that the last time, he was in the US, there was the grand Howdy Modi event that took place with the US President, the then US President Donald Trump. And Trump and Prime Minister Modi shared, a good relationship. The dynamics of his relationship with the President Joe Biden is something that we're going to still need to establish.
No, actually, I would say that the two of them they've met each other. While now President Biden was vice president. So it's not as if they don't know each other. And more importantly, Joe Biden knows the India relationship extremely well from way back when he was the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He knows South Asia very well. So, but if they can establish better personal rapport, that always helps in advancing the relationship because, if it is just left to the bureaucracies on both sides, things tend to stall. The one reason that India was able to get the civilian nuclear deal from the United States and end this isolation that we were in was because President George W. Bush and his Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice took personal interest in pushing the bureaucrats, pushing everybody to break out of the old thinking. So if they can establish like a personal relationship, I think that'll help a lot.
Right.
We'll have to wait and see how they connect.
Mr. Sharma, you wanted to come in?
Yes, I just wanted to say that this personal rapport has to be of a different kind. Prime Minister Modi actually is dealing with the third US president in his tenure. He's had very good relations with Obama. Then with President Trump, also he struck a kind of a sympathetic chord and they worked together. And President Biden now comes from a very traditional foreign policy understanding, and he is like a very normal, top leader of the US who understands things, from for a very long time. So it's easier to deal with him, and they understand India's concerns. So I think I agree with Seema Sirohi that this personal rapport is very important, and we hope that this will work out and spur and impel the relationship to greater heights.
Very quickly, before we move on, Seema Sirohi, vaccine, cooperation, acceptance of India's vaccines, whether it is, Covaxin, which has still not been approved by the WHO, Covaxin for that matter, isn't approved as the US listed vaccine. Only Covishield, has been approved in the US as well. Do you believe that's something that's going to be discussed?
I don't think it will be an issue during the meeting between Biden and Modi. It will be discussed at a lower level, probably between the foreign ministers, or even lower than that, perhaps. Because the Quad Summit, has to deliver on the 1 billion vaccines by the end of 2022. And that's the announcement they're going to make, probably. And India is extremely important in that because supposedly we are on track with being able to deliver 1 billion doses. So I don't know if they want to complicate things at the Prime Minister's level about all this.
Well, interesting though, the timing of the Prime Minister's tweet there that we just put out on our screens, which is calling for acceptance of vaccination certificates on a global level. How is this going to play out? There's going to be a lot of focus on this as far as viewers are concerned, and we'll of course track this story very closely as well. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us this morning on NDTV. Welcome back. The big story we're tracking from Uttar Pradesh. The UP government has recommended a CBI investigation into the death of Narendra Giri, the head of the top religious body Akhil Bharatiya Akhada Parishad. The development comes a day after the state police arrested Anand Giri, that's Narendra Giri's protege and closest aide, till they had a fallout in May. Now, the religious leader allegedly died by suicide, but the police has said that they found a suicide note that mentioned Anand Giri. What's really happening as far as the investigation is concerned? Alok Pandey joins us with the very latest. Alok, what more can you tell us?
Well, there's been no further movement, so to say, in the investigation per se, because the government, as you pointed out, recommended a CBI probe into the entire episode last night. This recommendation or order, so to say, came in last night around 11 p.m. and the government tweeted about it. So the CBI will officially perhaps take up the probe, but it will take some time. It will take at least 1 or 2 days for the formalities to be worked out. So that is happening. The post-mortem on the dead Seer was conducted yesterday, while the police have not said anything on record about what the post-mortem revealed, but some sources have certainly indicated that the post-mortem has also revealed that the death seems to have happened due to marks on the neck by strangulation, which means that it does seem to corroborate the suicide story. But again, that is all in the realm of sources and speculation. The government is, or the police is yet to hold a press conference to say anything like this, and that is now unlikely given that the CBI is going to take over. There's also the matter of succession within the Akhada Parishad. There are reports that the Seer in his suicide note had indicated a line of succession, but there are many there are many others within the Akhada and saints and Seers who say that they do not believe all of this, and they do not believe that they do not believe in the authenticity, so to say, of the suicide note, because they want more corroboration. So there will be meetings, and those meetings will decide who the next head will be. On the arrest, 3 people have already been arrested, as we updated last night. One of them is Anand Giri, the flamboyant number 2 or deputy to Narendra Giri, the Seer who died, and he is the main accused in the abetment suicide case. And there are 2 others who used to live at this Akhada with Narendra Giri, the Seer who died. And both of them have now been arrested. They are a father and son duo, so they have also been arrested. And it now is up to the CBI to start a swift investigation of the case.
Thanks very much, Alok, for joining us with the very latest. We'll keep a close watch on that investigation. With that, we're going to slip into a very short break. But coming up on the other side, well, what has the centre really told the Supreme Court about compensation for each COVID death? We'll tell you on the other side. Welcome back. Well, India is just weeks away, especially North India is just weeks away from the terrible pollution season that typically kickstarts around Diwali. And the WHO has in fact tightened its air quality standards based on the science of how deadly it is. In India, for instance, over 3 deaths a minute in 2019 are linked to air pollution. Now, the safe limit for the microscopic and very toxic PM 2.5 is 5 micrograms according to WHO. This is down from 10. And for a day's average, it is 15 micrograms. However, in India, especially North India's reality is far worse. Delhi's PM 2.5 level last year was 84, over 16 times the WHO's new safe limit. And other major cities, including Lucknow, Noida and Gurugram, were equally high.
The way new evidence is emerging that there are more and more premature deaths because of air pollution globally, and keeping that in mind, there is a need to revisit national air quality standard in India as well, and we probably need to collect large amount of health related data for a variety of cohorts.
Well, on to the other big story that we're tracking. The body of an abducted soldier from Jammu and Kashmir's Shopian was found after years, said the family. Shakir Manzoor's father, Ahmad, told NDTV, I've identified the body. It is my son. I identified him from his feet, his hair and also bracelet that he wore. A decomposed body was found in a village in Jammu and Kashmir's Kulgam and has been claimed as that of rifleman Shakir Manzoor, an army soldier missing since August the 2nd last year. He was kidnapped, tortured and killed by terrorists from the Shopian district. That's what we know. Nazir joins us with the very latest. Nazir, the body of a soldier has been found. This has been identified by the family, but it's shocking because he went missing in August 2020.
Yeah, exactly. And it will be after more than 13 months, the soldier will finally get a proper burial and the last rites. For all these months, for more than 1 year, distraught father and family and the neighbors were searching every day, going place to place, digging earth, looking to see if they can see the grave of where he has been buried, the body of Shakir Manzoor, 24-year-old soldier. But they didn't find. And finally, yesterday, villagers say they find a body in Kulgam district. Police was informed. Eventually, the locals informed the father as well, and he identified him as his son. And then the police also took out all the other forensic evidences as well, and also DNA samples were also taken to match it to see make it legally case. According to father of Shakir Manzoor Ahmed Baghe, he said that the body was taken to army headquarters in Srinagar, where there will be a wreathing ceremony. And he said after the proper wreathing ceremony by the army, the body will be handed over to the family today. And after 13 months, the missing soldier will finally get last rites and the final salute as well. So it is quite an ordeal here in Kashmir, where you see the soldier, who went missing, who was abducted by militants, allegedly tortured, and then killed, and his body was dumped at some nondescript place. And since more than 1 year, the father was, trying to find the body. Body was finally located. And after more than 13 months, the soldier is getting the final last rites.
Thanks, Nazir, for joining us with the very latest. We'll keep a close watch on those developments. Meanwhile, the CBI has unearthed a big racket involving the NEET exams and booked Maharashtra-based coaching institute and even students. Now, according to the information, the racket allegedly used proxy candidates to crack the NEET exam for the applicants. 50 lakh rupees per applicant was in fact charged. This, of course, was for proxy candidates who were set up in place of applicants. The racket attempted to compromise the NEET exam that happened on the 12th of September. After the DRI seized 3,000 kgs of heroin estimated to be worthy of nearly 21,000 crores at the Mundra port in Gujarat in 1 week ago, a couple whose name was on the import-export license was arrested in Chennai. Now, they had a registered address in Vijayawada. So, what really is the Andhra Pradesh connection to the narcotic trail? Uma Sudhir brings us the details.
There could be more than 3,000 kgs of heroin that's been smuggled into India. Investigating agencies are probing this after the 15th September seizure in Gujarat's Mundra port. Sources say a similar consignment came in June 2021 of 24 tons, marked as talc stone, via the same Gujarat port and is said to have been transported to Delhi. Security agencies are trying to find out if heroin was smuggled in that import consignment as well. Now the drug trail is widening. Investigation has revealed that the drug consignment, concealed as semi-processed talc stones, was exported by Kandahar-based company Hassan Hussain Limited in Afghanistan, and it was shipped through Bandar Abbas port in Iran to Mundra port in Gujarat, imported by Ashi Trading Company, located in Vijayawada, but owned by a Chennai-based couple. And the agency suspects that this consignment too was intended to be delivered in Delhi.
There is in fact said to be a third consignment that came through the same Mundra port and again marked as semi-processed talcum stone. The common link between the three shipments is that all of them had the same number on the country of origin certificates, which are now thought to be fake. But interestingly, this one had a different Afghani supplier and this time a Delhi importer.
While the Directorate of Revenue Intelligence is tight-lipped on the ongoing pan-India operation to nab the big players involved in the syndicate, Sources have told NDTV that the Vijayawada-based company was only a name lender and the arrested couple may not have known about the heroin consignment that was put below 2 layers of talc stones in powder. Investigators say the place of origin for the consignment is Nimruz province in Afghanistan, where talc is not produced. 5 more individuals, including 4 Afghan nationals, have been arrested. The address of Ashi Trading Company that was on the consignment bill is this house in Vijayawada, belonging to Govindaraju Taraka. Her daughter Vaishali and son-in-law Sudhakar were arrested in Chennai on Saturday.
The couple Sudhakar and Vaishali had got GST registration in August 2020 and used their export-import license in order to import the consignments, and they were paid 30,000 rupees for every container and 3 lakh rupees for customs clearances and transport to Delhi. They were in fact expecting 2 more consignments to arrive shortly.
1,75,000 करोड़ के 25,000 किलो हीरोइन ड्रग्स कहां गए, जो तथाकथित तौर से जून में आए थे इसी अडानी पोर्ट से.
Adani Group, which operates the Mundra port, says, "We have no policing authority over the containers or the millions of tons of cargo that pass through the terminals in Mundra or any of our ports."
Sources in central agencies say that the large seizure of drugs being reported in India and Sri Lanka in recent time shows that the drug syndicate is now relying more on maritime routes, and it's a matter of concern. Government sources have told NDTV that keeping security implications in mind, this case will be handed over to NIA from DRI soon. With Uma Sudhir and camera person Pooja Arya, this is Arvind Gunasekar for NDTV.
Well, on to the other big story. We're tracking the families of those who died of coronavirus in India will receive a 50,000 rupee compensation. This is what the centre informed the Supreme Court in an affidavit. However, the affidavit also says that it is the states that will pay the compensation, and that too within 30 days. Here's what families have to say.
In an affidavit filed in the Supreme Court, the centre says everyone who's lost their lives due to COVID will be compensated, and the families will receive 50,000 rupees for each COVID-19 death. Now, of course, there'll be discussions on that figure, the amount, but of course, it's also a start, because in several states there is compensation for COVID-19, but in some states like Maharashtra, for example, the police are getting 50 lakh if they've died on duty during COVID. And I have with me 2 people who've lost family members due to COVID. First is Mr. Adil Khan, and then of course Mr. Zubair Qazi. But आपसे जानना चाहेंगे कि रकम जो बताया गया है उसको लेकर आप क्या कहेंगे, क्या हुआ था आपके परिवार से, कौन कोविड की वजह से किसका डेथ हुआ है?
मेरे पिताजी का दिलदार खान का डेथ हुआ है कोरोना की वजह से, तो अभी संजोग हॉस्पिटल में बेटी में, तो इसके लिए मुआवजा जो भी है कम है.
जुबैर काजी जी, आपके परिवार से कौन किसका
डेथ हुआ था 10 जून को. 3-4 हॉस्पिटल में लेके गए, किसी ने उनको एडमिट नहीं किया. फाइनली जेजे ने एडमिट किया है, लेकिन अल्टीमेटली वो रात को 10:30 बजे डिक्लेयर डेथ ऑफ कोविड-19.
और ये रकम जो है आपको क्या लगता है
मिलना चाहिए? जब सुप्रीम कोर्ट का ऑर्डर है तो गवर्नमेंट शुड रिस्पेक्ट द जुडिशरी, और वो रकम मिलना चाहिए. अभी तक मिली नहीं है हमको, लेकिन मिलना चाहिए.
Well, moving on, women should be allowed to take the NDA exam. That's what the Supreme Court said, rejecting the government's request to defer the move until next year to establish a new system. The court said, "We gave hope to the girls. We cannot deny it to them now."
In a dramatic turn, the Supreme Court said that the first batch of girls should appear for NDA or National Defence Academy exams this year itself on 14th November. Just a day earlier, the centre had said that it would do so only in May next year.
Hearing, the Supreme Court told the centre, "We gave hope to the girls. Can't deny them of that hope now. If they appear in exams in May 2022, then the intake will take place in January 2023. Can't delay things by a year." The Supreme Court also said the no exam today, exam tomorrow approach will go against the aspirations of young women. When the centre said time is too short, we need to make preparations, the Supreme Court responded by saying armed forces are trained in dealing with emergencies. They will be able to deal with this. Women's entry into NDA is the gateway to a permanent commission in the armed forces.
it would be great opportunity to those girls who had just now passed 12, because they do not have to wait for a long period, 2 or 3 years. They just have to crack the exams and they have to give the SST, and then they will go in NDA and they will have their trainings.
Enough of time has been wasted in past many years where we have spoken about equal opportunity and why NDA should not be open for girls, and now this year just wasting it for preparing for the girls for the infrastructure so that they can accommodate them well next year. We can do it the same this year also.
The government says that gynecologists, sports medicine experts, nursing staff and female attendants would also need to be in place for women cadets. The next hearing of the case will take place in the 3rd week of January next year, when the government will update the court on the results of the exam. In New Delhi with camera person Prem Singh, this is Sukirti Dwivedi for NDTV.